Alright, welcome to Pollock Academy for Westward Expansion Part 2. We already know that Westward Expansion covers a lot of decades before, during, and after the Civil War. Look at this chart. Everything before the Civil War, these were the tough guys and gals going out west. They risked it all on wagon trains just to make it out there. But during and after the Civil War, we see that Westward Expansion changed. We see technology improvements make it so that the average Joes and Janes can get out west. In this video, I'm going to go over the reasons for continued expansion, and I'm going to focus on one in particular that helped shape the myth of the West. We've already discussed one reason for westward expansion, and that was that free land with the Homestead Act. We see settlers going out, trying their hand at farming. We've also discussed the second reason for westward expansion, and that was those new opportunities for freedmen. We see freedmen beginning with the Exodusters and other African Americans moving west and then eventually north. Now let's talk about some new stuff. Next, we see people going out west to get rich quick. We see a lot of gold, silver, and copper being found in the Rocky Mountain and Pacific regions. Usually the gold rush of 1849 gets all the credit. But 10 years later in 1859, gold and silver were found in Colorado and Nevada. And the last gold rush was in the late 1800s in the Klondike, which is Alaska and Canada. As a throwback to my other video, let's look at these two Western sports teams that honor the Gold Rush legacies. We have the San Francisco 49ers and we have the Denver Nuggets. Get it? Like a nugget of gold? I'm going to give you a spoiler alert about these gold rushes. Truthfully, not everybody went out there to find gold. Really, a lot of people went out there and made money by doing other things, like having hotels or restaurants or even clothing companies. Next, let's discuss the biggest technological feat of getting people out west was the Transcontinental Railroad. Think about it. Once a railroad connected the East Coast and the West Coast, it changed the game. No longer are you risking it all by walking alongside a wagon train or riding on a ship for months at a time. You could now just buy a ticket that was as low as $65 to go from New York to San Francisco, which used to take you months, and now it's as little as 4 days. The railroad really did help those average Janes and Joes get out west. Look at all the towns that grew along the railroad's path, and these tracks are still in use today. Okay, so let's remember the reasons for westward expansion with the acronym LARGE, L-A-R-G-E. And that brings me to my last reason for westward expansion, the one I want to focus on, the A, for adventure. I used to have a hard time teaching this because adventure is such a big, broad word. Then after some time, I realized that the word adventure is a little misleading, and we usually think about adventure meaning the Wild West. Picture it in your head, the Wild West. You probably thought of an image like this, or maybe an image like this, or maybe this video game. And that's not a bad thing. You think this way because you were taught to think this way. Because after the Civil War and as information moved faster, this is how Americans saw the West. And I'm going to go over two examples of maybe why we thought this way. First, we're going to talk about dime novels. Second, we're going to talk about William Buffalo Bill Cody. First, let's get this out of the way. Was the Wild West really wild? Not as much as you think. Yeah, sure, there were gunfights and robberies and cowboys and some other wild stuff, but it wasn't like that every single day. And these western cities were actually quite normal, and most had strict law enforcement and gun control. These dime novels and Buffalo Bill Cody took the most exciting parts of the West and really hyped it up to America. Dime novels were cheap books that were mass-produced, usually costing between 5 and 25 cents. These books and stories were affordable and they were easy to read, and they told exciting tales of the West, gunfights, cowboys and Indians, bank robberies, kidnapping. And readers, young and old, saw the West as this wild, exciting, dangerous place. I mean, look at these covers. Wouldn't you think that? And now we're going to end with Buffalo Bill Cody and his Wild West show. Buffalo Bill was a showman who had a Wild West traveling show, almost like a circus. This show began in 1883 and lasted for 30 years. This show toured almost year-round, and it went all over America and even Europe. Buffalo Bill hired sharpshooters, rodeo cowboys, and even Native Americans for his show. This show was extremely popular, and Buffalo Bill was a celebrity. But his show depicted many incorrect and misleading facts about the West, most notably the relationship between Native Americans and settlers, portraying the U.S. cavalry as heroes. Look at this famous picture of Buffalo Bill and Native Americans in a gondola in Italy. This show was traveling all over, helping mold the image of the West to the public. This leads to America's fascination with the cowboy in film, music, and television. Here in Portsmouth, there's a historic marker showing the last ever performance of the Wild West show. The year was 1916, during the First World War, and Buffalo Bill's show was going to come to Portsmouth and Norfolk and other Hampton Roads cities. Buffalo Bill was near 70 years old, and the Portsmouth show wound up being his last, and then he passed away 7 months later in 1917, forever capturing the West in the imagination of Americans.